So, Marvel's Spider-Man was my game of the year in 2018, mostly because it succeeded at giving me the unfailingly majestic sensation of swinging across New York City skyscrapers with ease and fluidity. Insomniac created what is, to me, the most satisfying balance of pendulous freedom and precise maneuvering in a Spider-Man game. It's a mechanic so perfectly crafted to mimic the reckless euphoria of careening through Manhattan that I actually prefer to play the game with motion blur on. I know, right? Unheard of. While normally reviled in most games for good reason, Spider-Man 2018's motion blur helps to fully immerse the player in the superhuman feat they're performing, swinging past buildings at speeds no land mammal was ever meant to reach. A little sensory overload, a little visual failure, just adds to the fantasy. But Spider-Man 2018 didn't stop at this spectacular movement. It also added a robust and expressive combat system that largely carried over into Miles Morales. What it lacks in raw input complexity, it makes up for in contextual depth. Being the Spider-Man is all about manipulating your surroundings and taking advantage of your agility. Pulling enemies into the air is the best way to control the fight, either by knocking them with a good uppercut or yanking them with webs. A well-timed or creative dodge can unbalance your opponent and open them up to a good beating. Webbing and electricity also leaves enemies vulnerable to pacification or use as an impromptu weapon, making them just as dangerous to their friends as the garbage, gun turrets, manhole covers, or grenades you can throw. Going one-on-one with your fists isn't impossible, but creative use of web attacks, air launches, and gadgets for flawless combo-building action keeps you throwing down for hours. Miles Morales takes this further with his Venom powers, bioelectric attacks that deal heavy damage, leave enemies stunned, and generally make this game's harder combat more manageable.
Gotta take out the transmitter.
But if that's not good enough for you, then, like its predecessor, Miles Morales adds considerable richness to its characters and its rendition of New York City. I found myself drawn into Miles Morales' world, his fleshed-out social circle, and his goals of becoming the best hero he can be. I was even struck by the incredible character depth, along with the writing that takes advantage of the comic book format. In other words, we know enough about these characters that we don't need introductions as much as we need updates. What are they doing now? How far have they progressed with their usual problems? And what are we going to learn about these characters in their new context? Even as someone with only a nominal grasp of the Spider-Man comics, I appreciated how starting the narrative in media res got audience to the interesting parts more expediently. I really like what having a Spider student has revealed about Peter Parker's character, and how Miles Morales explored some of this depth in the most subtle ways possible. Through the training modules he's placed around the open world, Peter's accidentally exposed just how batshit insane he's become after all the time he's spent as the world's only Spider-Man.
Plus, I love the puzzle. Should I find that first? How do I break up that group? Can I rattle enough trash cans to convince this gang of ruffians that Claire is haunted by vengeful pirate ghosts? So many questions. So much fun.
Aside from a couple of people who found out his secret on their own, Mary Jane was the only person he's openly shared his identity with. While I'm sure MJ was some help when they were together, he's never met someone who knew from experience what it was like to live as a Spider-Man, to have the same power and responsibility. It's no wonder the Hollow Pete's sound totally unhinged. Miles understands him, the joys, hardships, and absurdities of the job. It might be tempting to write this stuff off as awkward comedy, but his dorky pedagogy belies an emotional unburdening that I honestly found quite touching. That's the kind of understated writing I live for. Small differences that speak to how characters have been changed by their narratives. Peter Parker isn't alone anymore. Of course he's going to be too enthusiastic. The excitement is probably a sign that he's shedding his self-imposed isolation, connecting with his brother-in-arms. Spider arms.
I did this gig for 8 years without backup, and you better believe I screwed up lots of times. But that is how you learn.
I know some people may think that's a reach, but I hate the idea that profundity can't come from silly spaces. All art is worth analyzing, even when it's not copying Martin Scorsese's or your classics professor's homework. But okay, enough about the black superhero's white mentor. Miles Morales has a real rainbow of friendships across Harlem. Gloria returns from the first game, her situation having improved significantly. She's helping run the homeless shelter that took her in years ago, and she has a girlfriend. Then there's Haley, the street artist, who has remarkable chemistry with Spider-Man. What's funny, I'm sure she totally suspects that Miles is Spider-Man. His moderate fluency with ASL must have been a dead giveaway to someone most likely to notice the nuances in a person's signing. It's sweet that she's so respectful of his identity. Then there's his immediate circle. Rio Morales, driven to action by her husband's death, is running for city council, representing her community against the forces out to harm them. Forces like energy sector dickhead Simon Krieger, a blatant send-up of self-absorbed industrialists like Elon Musk, and contract employer of one Aaron Davis, aka the Prowler, Miles' uncle. The strife between Aaron and the family didn't make sense to Miles until he found himself fighting the same battles his dad went through. Plus, he's got his communal family. His school friend Genki works as his very own Oracle, whose computer skills are liberally deployed for plot convenience. It's pretty cheesy how Genki can hack into their systems whenever a mission needs advancing, but I also understand writing a Spider-Man who can connect with his neighbors and family for support. It makes him a perfect foil to the main antagonist, Finn, whose troubled grief drove her to isolation and embittered her spirit with vengeance.
Come near me again, I'll kill you.
So, I should say here, everyone's mileage will vary on the race representation and the political context of a black teenage superhero in Harlem. I'm not going to litigate the balance black stories need to strike between cathartic optimism and incisive topicality, and I don't feel like falling on my sword for a game made by mostly white leadership. Again. Definitely acknowledge Gita Jackson's piece for Vice. They question the intentions of a game that treats the major force of violence against black people in New York with kid gloves. Millions of Americans, including our president, still think it's a good idea to fund the police, in spite of the abuse and negligence and racism inherent in their training. And I wouldn't judge anyone for feeling like Miles Morales uses non-confrontational inclusion to let white people off the hook for educating themselves. For whatever my opinion is worth, I think the game does right by targeting white capitalists who carve up minority neighborhoods for personal gain. A side quest uncovering Wilson Fisk's attempt to reform his criminal empire astutely depicted how men like him worked their business and government connections to hurt marginalized communities. He's clearly been greasing palms at the civil regulatory agency with power over the homeless shelter. This theme of wealthy predation is also evident with Roxxon, a formidable clean energy initiative spearheaded by an infantile, exploitative, and self-impressed little stain of a man. A guy who gets away with being terrible because those in power are convinced that a profit is always worth more than the safety or dignity of human beings. That's who Krieger and Fisk are stand-ins for. Robber barons using their economic leverage to destabilize communities of color, especially by destroying pillars of community vitality and collective support. Of course, seeing the bad guy get arrested at the end should remind us that this is in fact science fiction. However, I still appreciate that Miles Morales differentiates himself from Peter Parker by doubling down on his bond with the community. Peter Parker largely did Spider-Man on his own. For whatever good he thought that did, his secret identity ruined his relationships, stunted his professional development, undermined his financial security, and ruined his mental health, even if it was played for laughs. Despite the low bar Peter set as a functioning superhero, Miles can't even begin to feign the same individualist delusion.
The other Spider-Man was super clear. Don't tell anyone who you are.
You told me. Maybe if she knows it's you she's fighting, she'll rethink the whole Tinkerer thing.
His connections to others make him who he is, and that didn't change when he became Spider-Man. That makes sense though, given who his mother is. Rio Morales got back up after getting knocked down by tragedy, resolved to stand tall for her home. To her, community is about being brave for the people around you. Miles takes this into his mission as Spider-Man. to show the people that their struggles matter just as much as costume supervillainy. Threats to neighborhood stability, crumbling infrastructure, or even losing a cat. While Peter Parker still trusts institutions like the police, Miles follows a lot of issues back to the block, making sure his neighbors actually benefit from his actions. This is the difference between Spider-Man and Finn's work with the Underground, a local gang looking to fill the power vacuum left behind by Wilson Fisk. They're helping Finn destroy Roxxon facilities in exchange for weapons and high-profile targets they can take over to shore up their street cred.
We gotta start planning for what happens after Tinker.
She going somewhere?
She's with us because she wants to stick it to Roxxon. As soon as that's done, bet you grab us.
Okay.
We gotta be ready to stand out.
Power back.
Now, Spider-Man isn't opposed to radical action. Trespass, steal data, destroy property, punch bootlickers. Those are all good, legitimate forms of community defense. Just don't turn your traumatic bereavement into the kind of scorched earth political contempt that destroys the people you think you're protecting. But hey, when has emotion-driven infighting ever been a problem in leftist spaces? And Miles isn't just moralizing. He practices what he preaches. When he lost his father to an attack from the demons, he didn't look for something or someone to lash out at. He took refuge in the love of his family and friends, tried his hardest to mend bonds while there was still something to repair. When the people he stuck his neck out for failed him again and again, that love may have toughened up, but it didn't go away. Miles carried on the belief that if he became his best self, then his actions could inspire good in others. And that really helped him stand out as an amazing Spider-Man. After all of that excellent characterization, I can't wait to see where Spider-Man 2 takes him. Because if they're teasing Venom in the latest trailer, then we might also see Peter Parker don the black suit. As yet more dangerous supervillains threaten the city, will this confident, capable Miles clash with his former mentor, a man already fraying under the weight of his responsibilities, pushed to the edge by Kraven the Hunter? That's just a thought about where this new story could go. Because with 2 stellar titles in the bag, I'm excited for the new heights this franchise will reach.